Welcome back to KP Unpacked. My name is Jeff Eccles. I'm a senior advisor at KP Ready Company, and this is my opportunity to ask KP Ready about his LinkedIn post. This is the only opportunity that I get to say, "Hey, KP, what were you thinking?" As usual, I am joined by their CEO and CEO and founder of both. Got the co instead of both. The CEO and founder of Shadow Ventures and KP Ready Company. KP, welcome back.
Hey Jeff, how's it going?
It's going really well. It's you're in the basement today. It looks like I'm in the basement today. Things here in the Midwest are very gloomy, as is usually the case these days in the middle of winter. But great time to sit and record podcasts where we unpack your LinkedIn posts.
Yeah, my mother-in-law has a fantastic office. She has much better. This is like her actual just everyday background. She doesn't stream or anything. This is just how things look around here. So
Very good. Yeah,
it's all very buttoned up.
it is. It is. There's a reason my camera is pointed right. Maybe not quite that buttoned up around here. If you do not follow KP Ready on LinkedIn, you should. Right? If you're listening to this, maybe I don't know how you got here. Maybe you were searching the internets, so to speak. Maybe you're on your favorite podcast app and you just happened upon this. But what we do here at KP Unpacked is we take one of KP's LinkedIn posts and unpack it. It's that simple. So if you're not following him, you should follow KP Ready on LinkedIn. So it's just KP Ready, Reddy, on LinkedIn. Follow him because he posts at least once a day, usually more. And all of his posts are very insightful about the AEC world, about innovation, about the future of professional services for the built environment. And I get to come here and spend a little bit of time talking about one of those posts with KP, asking what the inspiration is, and digging a little deeper. And so we're going to do that here again today. The post that I've picked out, this is actually a post that you reshared from our company page. So from the KP
Mhm.
Ready Co page, you reshared this. And it goes like this. So many events in the AEC industry focus on panels that report back to the audience on the case studies of their work. So the past, they report
Mhm.
back on the past. They rarely shape any predictions of the future, mostly because they are there to promote their product or service. While our Catalyst network, and that's our online network for KP
Mhm.
Ready Company, we have a community online on the Circle platform, if any of you are familiar with that. It says, while our Catalyst network has no crystal ball, they are hard at work contributing and collaborating on how innovation will shape everyone's future. Do you want to be in the room where it happens, in quotes, which you're going to tell me in a minute where that quote is from because I'm not as cultured. Do you want to be in the room where it happens, or would you prefer to be Aaron Burr? Okay, that was the big hint right there, right? So what's that quote from?
That's from Hamilton. It's from
Right,
Hamilton,
right.
which I'm not clearly. I'm not really that cultured. However, uh, a lot of people hyped it up and said, "Hey, you got to go see Hamilton. You got to see Hamilton." Of
Yeah, yeah,
course, when
yeah.
people hype things up, I'm less interested in going
Sure. Yeah.
because it means it's probably terrible. But I did go and I thoroughly enjoyed it. And I was fortunate to meet some of the cast members and stuff like that. So it's super cool. Um, but yeah, that's where it's from.
Yeah.
But there's very few like plays I'm recommending these days. I don't go to that many.
Yeah, that I understand. We can talk concerts and things maybe a little
Right.
bit better. But I think that's a great reference, right?
Mhm.
The room where it happens. When I think about the Catalyst Network, and again, a little bit of a description, that is our online community. That's our Facebook, if you will. I don't really like making that comparison, but I think it's understandable for people. It's a community where a platform where our community can gather, and the people that are in there are leaders from E&R top 500 firms.
Mhm.
They are people that are our mastermind members, so our innovation leaders, our construction technology leaders, our early and mid-career, our AI pros. Um, they are founders from our incubator companies. There are a lot of different people in that, on our platform, in that community, that Catalyst network. But they
Mhm.
are, as you say, they are the doers. They're the
Mhm.
people that are shaping the future of the built environment. So that is the room. I
Yeah.
think it's a great way to describe it.
Yeah, and I think, the challenge is, name the event, right? Name the event.
Right.
They are all driven by sponsorship models. It
Hmm.
was kind of funny. I got an accounting for our 2024 of sponsorship revenue. It barely deserves its own line item in our financial
Hmm.
statement. Like it's pretty bad. Like we don't get a lot of sponsors. And it's partly because a lot of sponsors are like, "Hey, I'd love to sponsor your event. Love to sponsor your podcast." We get
Hmm.
those, but then they want us to like only talk about um they only want to talk about like we have to talk about their nonsense, right? And I'm not
Right.
going to talk about whatever they're schlepping today.
Yeah.
I'll talk about stuff that people are schlepping if I believe in it, but I'm not like
Sure.
I
Yeah.
don't know. What are they gonna pay us, like 20 grand or something for what? Like, that's a big so what. So I think what's happened is we have this industrialized event system
Mm.
in our industry, right?
The event
Whether it's
industrial complex.
whether it's the alphabet soup of
Hmm.
organizations, whether it's built worlds, ENR, like the media side of things, where they're not really media, right? If you think about
Hmm.
ENR, probably a little bit more media. They report on projects and stuff. So there's like a journalistic component to it. Whereas like built worlds, there's no journalistic component to any of it. It's just really events and programming based on what sponsors want to do.
Right.
And that's fine if that's yeah, I'm not gonna judge people's business models. That's their business model. I think the challenge with that is it becomes an echo chamber of the same companies and the same topics because everybody's kind of selling the same stuff, right? And I think, one component we've added into our kind of ecosystem really has been owners, and that's continuing to grow. And so the conversations that owners are having with us, these are everyone's customers about how they want to work with us. I don't think I've ever seen that before in any
Right.
community, because there's just not a great forum for that. So we're going to continue to double down on our owner relationships into 2025. But the Hamilton reference is basically that Aaron Burr gets like shut out of the meet, like when they talk about creating our country and the economic system and all those things and what this country stands for. Aaron Burr's not invited. So I'm not sure why. I'm not sure what he was schlepping. Maybe he was schlepping something. They're like, "Hey, no infomercials in here, man. Like, you can't
Yeah.
come
Yeah.
in here and tell us about what you're
Yeah.
selling." Um, but I think it's important, and I think people keep asking us to define what we've been building and what I've been building.
Hmm.
Like, oh, like you guys are events, you guys are community. Like, it's just like all the above. And I was like, maybe I don't need to, we're not funded from the outside,
Yeah.
right? All these other organizations have investors. There's only one stakeholder here, like me, right? So I get to do whatever I want to do in many ways. But there is some method to our madness in terms of really trying to move the industry forward
Mm.
on multiple levels, right? On multiple levels, whether it's education, creating safe spaces for people to communicate to each other, by keeping some people out. You create a safe space by curating the right people in the room and not letting the wrong people in the room, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that's kind of why I was, the post was interesting to me. Other than does anybody how cultured is our audience? I think I'm the only one that reposted. I'm probably the only one that like reacted to it. So apparently our community is a lot less cultured
Not
than I
very.
thought. than I thought. I guess it's football season. Who can think about Broadway?
I guess, yeah. Well, but there's something that you touch on, or that you touched on there, that really got me thinking because um, I can't share too much about this because we're not really ready to announce it yet. But something that we're working on that I think will probably become the concept behind it. I think will probably become a driving force if it's not already in what we do. And it's this idea of and understand, no hate mail, please, because I'm not going to apply this term uh, absolutely properly. But the idea of the circular economy.
Hmm.
Um, there's so much of what we do, and you mentioned having owners in the room, and this thing that we're going to launch probably um, Q1, maybe towards the end of Q1 2025, is 100% focused on the circular economy. In that,
Hmm.
when we talk about innovation for the built environment, what we mean is how it's designed,
Hmm.
how it's developed, how it's constructed, the materials and things that go into
Hmm.
it, how it's operated, how people live there, how people work there, whatever the use is, whatever the the solution is, I suppose. And that idea of the owners being in the room, they're part of that. That's what I'm not completely properly referring to as the circular economy. It's everything involved
Hmm.
in the built environment and in creating and operating the built environment. And so the owners are a big piece of that, right?
Hmm.
And so the room where it happens, like you said, echo chamber, and you come from a civil engineering background. I come from an architecture background. I've been a member of AIA, part of the alphabet soup
Hmm.
for decades now. Um, have spoken at all of the alphabet soup
Hmm.
events as you have, and the thing that stands out is yes, those are echo chambers. I go to an
Hmm.
AIA event, and it's architects and sponsors, generally speaking. I go to other types of events, and they are, it's this narrow swath and maybe sponsors, right? But our circular economy, the room where it happens is truly the room where it happens because it's the owner saying, hey, this is what we need. And it's the architects and engineers and contractors responding to that.
Hmm.
It's not just this, oh, this is the way we ought to do business. It comes full circle, the circular economy
Yeah. And
idea.
I think you hit on it a little bit too, like um, the building products manufacturers, right?
Hmm.
These people have massive R&D budgets, and we act like we can't give them the time of day. We'll let them
Hmm.
come buy $10 sandwiches at a lunch and learn,
Yeah.
right? But if you think about it, if you take a systems thinking approach to anything,
Right.
and that's what we're designing and building, operating as systems, right?
Hmm.
They're not buildings, they're systems. In what universe do they not have a seat at the table?
Right.
And where we're giving them a feedback loop to say, hey, that next chiller you design for your next version, here's some feedback on the existing one, and here's the trends. Here's some great feedback so that when you guys design your next chiller or you're inventing your next thing, we're giving you. I mean, I always tell people it's this odd thing where, if Apple designed an iPhone and never talked to the camera manufacturers and the glass manufacturers and everyone else, and just kind of did it in a vacuum and said, "Oh, Foxconn, go figure it all out," right? That's what we're doing. It's absolutely absurd and so I think having the right people in the room, right, um, that are able to share an opinion and a voice, and have like an integrated voice, so to speak, to drive change. I think that's really what we're doing. And a lot of people are like, it's kind of funny. We do some of these things, and of course we have a revenue model associated with it. And I think we've yet to turn down somebody that is super passionate, and for whatever reason, their budget cycle or whatever, that we say, hey, like we're going to exclude you because you can't pay to enter the room. I think we've been pretty good about making exceptions for the right people, right? The right people.
Hmm.
And a lot of times it's just, it's budgets and budget cycle, like whatever it is, right? Um, and we've actually had a lot of people pay like out of their own pocket to be in the room because their
Mhm.
boss is like, no, I don't think you should be doing that. Fine, right?
Yeah,
They just do it themselves. So
yeah.
I think um, while there's kind of a price of admission to the room, right? I don't think that's where we're hanging our hat. Now, with that said, like the revenue model allows us to drive growth, right? Allows us to make new hires, have more more scale to what we're doing. So that's a necessary requirement. But I think foundationally, um, we're actually trying to drive change and not in a committee policy way, right? If another alphabet soup organization starts another innovation committee, it's basically like a nothing, they're not doing anything, right? Or always related to like, hey, how's that BIM standard going? From 15 years ago, like,
Right.
how's IFCs go? Like when people want to talk about standards and every, what I'll tell you is everybody that wants to be on the same page will never do anything. Everybody
Right.
being on the same page might be the definition of mediocrity.
Yes. Yeah.
So my view is if you want to go do those things, go do those things, go be mediocre.
Mhm.
Everyone that knows me, I'm far from. I might deliver mediocrity sometimes, but it's not on purpose. I was just tired. I was just tired, right? It's like my LinkedIn post. Not all of them are winners, Sometimes I'm just tired, y'all.
Yeah.
But or sometimes I had maybe one or two bourbons and I'm a little sleepy too. But I think foundationally, right? It's that drive to really, make a difference. And I think the herd mentality is sometimes the circling of the wagons, right? When I meet with these large firm roundtables and they all have a point of view that's just absolutely wrong, that is a circling of the wagons and fear of the future. And if you're afraid of the future, like go play somewhere else. Go to Built Worlds. By the way, I love Built Worlds. A lot of my people are there at Built Worlds. It's kind of funny. A lot of my portfolio companies, they've been sweeping up on the awards over at Built World, so I should probably have a better attitude towards it. But because they do help us out a good bit, whether they like it or not. But I think it's just what you're into, right? It's just what do you want to do?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and I think the idea of being in the room is always is also about being in the right room. And the quote is the room where it happens.
Mhm,
And so as you were saying that, I'm thinking about like our mastermind groups,
mhm,
right? In a way, as a, for instance, our innovation leaders mastermind group, that's a role focused mastermind group. So this is people that are director of innovation, chief innovation officer, right? They have responsibility at the strategy and budget level to guide
mhm.
innovation for their firms, and they
Yeah.
are from architecture firms and engineering firms and construction firms. But this is also a room where they challenge each other. They ask
Hmm.
questions, and I have a lot of people. I do all the vetting for our mastermind groups, and a lot of people are like, "Oh, I want to get into that group," and so they come. This is what I can bring to the group. This is what I can bring to the group. I said,
Hmm.
"That's great. What do you want to take away from this group?" Right?
Yeah.
Because it's a two-way street, and it can't be. You can't come to, whether it's our community, our Catalyst Network, or one of our events like the executive briefing in Miami about a month ago, I think, as we record this. Um, our mastermind groups, you can't come with the idea of this is what I bring to it,
Hmm.
because if that's what you bring to it, that's sort of a fixed mindset approach to it, right? Okay,
Yeah.
this is how I'm coming in. I don't care where you come in. I want to know where it
Yeah.
is that you're going out. We have the same conversation in the incubator, right? If
Yeah.
you have the same idea 4 weeks from now that you did today, there's a problem.
Yeah. You better show up and be ready to fight.
Yeah,
Like you better have a point of view,
but
right?
we can't talk about it.
Yeah. You better have a. Not everybody gets that reference, Jeff. That's
I
that's that's an
understand.
that's an old Gen X reference.
They can Google it.
um, but I think, like, if you're gonna show up and not have a position, right? Like, you gotta show up and have a position, and everybody's gonna pile on, right? And defend your position. And it's through, like, having a strong point of view and being willing to defend it, that's where the magic happens, right? That's where progress is made. It's not made through, "Let's all decide on something together." Like, "Let's all decide on something together."
Hmm.
Yeah, that just means that we're gonna all decide on something that meets half of our needs.
Right. Right.
Mediocrity.
For the architects out there, because those are my people, right? That's my world. It's my background. The
Dude,
whole
I'm not
idea
gonna
of
lie. I think architecture might be going away.
uh, there
Like, as
are
we know it, it might go it might move actually from being its own discipline to being a function, right? To being
okay.
a function of design, right? It's a piece part, like being a lighting consultant, right?
Mhm.
And if you think about it, I was talking to some architects about this. They've, like, outsourced everything. You have a lighting consultant, a lead consultant.
Yeah.
They basically become like project managers. And once owners kind of start figuring that out, that they don't actually do that much,
Mhm.
they're just outsourcing it all, then they love it. Owners love working with people that outsource everything, like general contractors.
Yeah.
So I think it's an interesting time to really, and these are the conversations we can have. I mean, I'll have them in a public forum. I don't care. But if you're in an architecture firm and you're in one of our, you're in the room, we're having these conversations,
Yeah.
right? And as an architect, you have to defend, like, hey, like, I think you guys are wrong. I think architecture is always like great. Like, let's go. Let's run it.
Yeah, my take on that though is, and this goes back, 20 years ago, I was part of the leadership team at a firm where, yeah, maybe it was a little more than 20 years ago now as I date myself, but our idea was, the reason that our clients were coming to us was because of our design ability.
Hmm.
Right. It was not only like the aesthetic, the exterior, the elevations and whatnot, but it was also the experience of the spaces. And we understood that we weren't that great at producing the construction documents. We were proficient, we were competent, all those things, but we were slow and all that. So we did exactly what you're saying,
Hmm.
right? We started to basically pare our practice down
Hmm.
with the goal of clients who really, really wanted a certain level and expertise, and there were specialties involved here, but that wanted that design expertise. Pay us for that, right? Pay
Hmm.
us what we're worth for that, and we will happily let somebody else, you know, do the AutoCAD, the Revit models, the
Hmm.
detailing, the whatever. You will consult with them, to make sure that the design is carried out. But I could easily see, um, the profession headed in a direction like that, or becoming a whole bunch of subspecialties.
Hmm.
I think the quote unquote full service firms are kidding themselves
Hmm.
because they can't, right? They can't be the best at all of those aspects,
No.
and arguably they aren't the best at any of those aspects.
Yeah.
So I think what you're saying holds a lot of water. We really need to rethink the model, the business model, certainly,
Hmm.
or business models
Yeah.
that are possible, not only with technology but in the marketplace.
Yeah. I think it's kind of what happened with technology. Back in the '90s, when I was building, internet companies and such, you had we basically hired graphic designers that knew how to use to build the front ends of website.
And they were
And then
UX.
they would take all the all the front end, the UX stuff. It was actually UI. It wasn't even UX. It was like UI, right? And then they would create these heavy Adobe files, and then we'd basically have to, like, carve them down into, like, being JPEGs. And there were these elaborate things that, quite honestly, showed up in print but didn't show up on a screen, right? Back in the day, 480p. So, um, so so they had to, dumb it down a bit for the internet, and then we had a programmer that would take those and implement them in HTML, right? That was the system. Now that's insane, right? Now we talk about full stack developers, right? The full
Right.
stack
Right.
developer understands the UX, the CX, for those that you don't
Hmm.
know, user experience, customer experience. They understand that. They understand what can be done on the coding side, right? So in many ways back then, the architects were like the graphic designers, and the software coders were like the engineers and contractors. Like, oh, how are we going to get this to work right? Oh, you put too much detail here. This is impossible to build. We're gonna have to dumb it down for the internet, right? And now in software, it's just full stack developer, right? We used to have software engineers that didn't even have Adobe products because they were expected to be fed the
Right.
images
Right. Yeah.
and where to put them, right? That's what they did. Where do you want this image? Now we have full stack developers. So it's kind of fully integrated, right? In most cases. So it's like, as you think about that, what does full stack look like to get the overall like impact for an owner?
Yeah.
So anyway, we digress a bit, but I mean, honestly, these are the digressions we have.
Hmm.
Oh,
Sure.
or talk about this stuff. But I think the time has come in a way. We have generational shifts. I mean, the conversations I'm having, and you know how busy it is for me,
Hmm.
but just what the owners are telling me, and they don't have a voice, and they spend all the money. How do you spend all the money and you don't have a say so? You don't have a voice in
Yeah.
the industry? Like that's nonsense.
Yeah. The blind spot to that is a fundamental issue in the industry, and I fully believe that that is going to be leveraged. That is going to be a thing that drastically changes the way the architects and engineers and contractors are able to do business
Hmm.
going into the future, because the owners are getting, to the chagrin of many out there that have closed their mind to this idea that they're in professional services. These are professional services fields, right?
Hmm.
And if we are not creating a client experience and a client outcome,
Yeah.
right, that our clients find value in, right, the value
Hmm.
proposition of these things, and then we lose. And I think the owners are headed towards a place
Hmm.
where they're better able to
Yeah.
leverage that reality. And I think that's going to have a huge impact on the way business is done going
It's
forward.
yeah, it's super interesting. I used to be a big BMW guy, and there was a time where, man, if you were a driver and you wanted to drive a car, BMWs, Porsche, like those were the cars, right? Wasn't quite didn't quite have the budget for the Ferraris and all those things, right? Um, and then I got out of my car phase. Now I'm in a motorcycle phase. But in my car phase, it was an interesting time because if you bought a BMW, you had to be able to afford the maintenance, which was insane.
Yeah.
They're all very problematic cars, right? At a
Hmm.
point. And then BMW came out and said, hey, for the first 60,000 miles, maintenance is included. That's when they took off
Yes.
because it was like, hey, I love my BMW the day I buy it, but then a year later, it's my nemesis, right? Like, oh my God, I just spent every time I go into the dealership, it's $1,000. Like, I can't afford to do this. And I think sometimes like that's where we are with owners, right? They get a building design, they go through all the pain and suffering of it. They go through the financing department, and like we had like just like when you buy a car and you get like try to get sold all kinds of nonsense you don't need. And there's negotiations and they do all that stuff, right? But they finally get what they think they wanted. And they are so excited, right? I always tell people, the 10%, the closeout docs, the reason why closeout docs don't happen is the owners just don't care anymore.
Yeah. They're moving
They've
in.
been beaten into submission. They just want the damn keys to the building.
Yeah.
Like, they're just ready to move in. Yeah, 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 whatever. Closeout docs, get them to me later.
Hmm.
They never follow up. They never get delivered, right? Because they're just so excited to move in. And then they release that 10% retainage or whatever the retainage is. Then they go into building and they're like so excited, like that new building smell, right? All those VOCs coming off the carpets and the paints, fantastic, right? It's like it's that vibe, right?
Mhm.
But then 5 years from now, dang, they're unhappy with their building. This hasn't worn well. Oh my God, that damn chiller's always giving us a problem. I mean, all the things, right? And but everybody's gone. Everybody's
Mhm.
gone, and they're done. So now they're unhappy. But the problem is the people that are unhappy with it never have a voice on the next project.
Yeah.
All the maintenance people. So I feel like that's where we are in a moment in time where there's so many things, just amazing things happening in the world right now in terms of projects and airports and stuff like that. However, I think the owners are figuring it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and we could do a whole episode on this certainly, right? Because
Yeah.
we could dig into what I call sophisticated versus unsophisticated owners and
Yeah.
people like that. So the beauty is sometimes we get to speak in extremes and absolutes.
Yeah.
But I think, in terms of the forces that are driving the market and it's just like we talk about trickle down. What always amazes me is I used to here's something that our audience doesn't know. I used to race mountain bikes,
Hmm.
and there was a particular
I
brand
mean, when you
and
were young,
bike
when you were young,
when I was younger. Yes, a crash now would not be good.
my hip,
Yeah, yeah.
my hip.
Recovery time is much longer these days, no matter how many yoga classes I go to. But but it used to always amaze me in the days when dual suspension bikes became
Mhm,
attainable, that a lot of the technology that was on my bike, whether it was the suspension fork or the shock for the back, a lot of that was coming indirectly, was coming from Formula One.
mhm,
And you think about that, you go, okay, well, you guys are talking about these owners that are big owners or whatever. It's like it trickles down.
mhm,
It's coming down, whether it's in the form of tech or expectations. It's coming down, and it will drive the market. So, um, again, we could do a whole series on this. Maybe we should.
mhm.
But
Maybe.
these are the things that are discussed at
Yeah.
executive briefings and are discussed in mastermind groups,
Yeah.
that are discussed in the Catalyst Network, which you referred to as sort of the basis of this post that we've been unpacking.
Mhm.
So let me recap. I'll read the post again. And again, if you're not following KP Ready, KP Reddy on LinkedIn, you should be. This is actually one that KP reposted from our corporate page, from the KP Ready Co. page, but it pops up, of course, on his personal feed here. So many events in the AEC industry focus on panels that report back to the audience on the case studies of their work. So, in other words, the past. They rarely shape any predictions of the future, mostly because they are there to promote their product or their service. While our Catalyst network has no crystal ball, they are hard at work contributing and collaborating on how innovation will shape everyone's future. And you may read that or hear me say that, go, that sounds odd. We're referring to our community, the Catalyst Network, in that sense. And so the question is, do you want to be in the room where it happens, the Hamilton reference, or would you prefer to be Aaron Burr? And if you haven't seen the musical, maybe you need to Google that. I don't know what you need to do in order to understand that. Maybe re-listen to KP's explanation at the beginning of this episode. But uh, hopefully, hopefully this has been intriguing, thought-provoking. We've gone a little bit all over the place in this conversation, but I think it's been a good one. Thank you for this, KP.
Absolutely.
We'll be back again next week. We publish one of these episodes every week where we unpack KP's LinkedIn posts. If you're not following him, again, KP Ready on LinkedIn. once, twice, three times the latest on LinkedIn. KP's posting things that are definitely relevant, that are thought provoking, and may challenge you in terms of the way things are happening and will happen in the AEC industry. So thanks for listening. We'll be back. Our producer Ethan will post everything in the show notes, all the links and things that we've talked about, and we'll see you again next week. Thanks, everybody. Thanks, KP.
Hey, AJ. See ya.